Section 6 of the Diary of a Russian Lady. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Tom Shoesmith. The Diary of a Russian Lady by Barbara Doukhovsky. Chapter 6. Dolgik. During the summer maneuvers, a squadron was quartered in our village. The chief, a provincial lady-killer with a face upon which high thinking had never been expressed, was the possessor of a very inflammable heart. He fell a victim to my blue eyes, and it wouldn't have been me if I hadn't tried to get up a flirtation with him, though he was ridiculous to the highest degree, and saluted me so funnily, bringing his heels together with a snap. He used every means in his power to conquer me, and made the most wonderful eyes at me, when Mamma was not looking, of course. He began to be immensely sentimental, and sang to me to a guitar accompaniment old love songs, something very pleading and lamentable, with a burden of "I love thee so," turning up his eyes a good deal as if he was in pain. He was not gifted with much perception of time and tune, my troubadour, and I could hardly keep serious when he looked so doleful, with his hand pressed to his breast, and his eyes devouring me with a passionate gaze. I used to ride on horseback a great deal, accompanied by my sentimental officer. One day, whilst my white mare was galloping wildly across the open moors, my saddle unbuckled, and I felt it turning with me. I slipped out of it and found myself sitting on the grass, unhurt, and was on my legs all right in a moment, having luckily disengaged my foot from the stirrup. A few days afterwards I escaped from another danger. We were to take a drive in the woods that evening. Mr. K., a friend of my brother's, asked me to take him with me in my dog-cart. As I didn't particularly care for his company, I contrived to put off our drive for some time, and suggested a game of croquet. In the middle of our game Mr. K. uttered a piercing scream and fell down in a violent fit of epilepsy. I was dreadfully frightened, and scrambled without ceremony over the fence of the croquet ground. None of us had before suspected Mr. K. to be epileptic, and if I hadn't delayed our drive, this attack would have happened in my dog-cart, and the consequences might have been terribly disastrous. It makes me shudder when I think of it. I went out driving one day with a dashing young officer, Count Podgoricani, his sister Mary, and my dolorous troubadour. I was in a mood just then to do something foolish, and it struck me that it would be charming fun to take a ride astride on the horse which drove us, and thus, becoming deaf to Mary's frantic remonstrance, and casting dignity to the winds, I perched myself on our steed, who broke into a gallop, whilst my cavaliers ran by my side, holding me steadily. That was certainly very unladylike, and shocking of me. We were near neighbours with the Podgoricanis. Their estate is within a few miles from Dolgik. The young count was always devoted to me. He believed that we were destined for one another, and it was the hope of his life to make me his wife. But my heart was still entirely at my own disposal, and I never gave him more than a passing thought, being hard to catch as a sunbeam. It wasn't very fair, however, to keep him dangling after me like that, if I didn't mean that it should come to anything. One day, as I was practising one of my favourite Chopin's etudes, the Count came in and leant on the piano, his eyes dwelling upon me with a passionate expression. Suddenly he seized my right hand and kissed it, whilst I played accords with my left one. I knew quite well what he was going to say. He implored me to marry him, but I had not yet made up my mind to part with my liberty, and said no, point blank, telling him he would have to get on as best he could without me. His face fell, and he looked very miserable, my rejected lover, his matrimonial hopes being rudely shattered. A wealthy country squire, the possessor of a fine adjoining estate, who had the reputation of being a very good catch, came to pay us a visit. I made no attempt whatever to show off my best points, and made up my mind, on the contrary, to make a guy of myself, putting on my most unbecoming gown and dressing my hair unfashionably, so that he might see me at my worst. Our guest was all sentiment and poetry. His language was music spoken, and I responded by the most crude prose. He asked me at luncheon, "Mademoiselle aime les fleurs?" "Oh, non, monsieur, je préfère le jambon," I answered, helping myself to a second portion of ham. Mamma looked very annoyed indeed at this unromantic turn of conversation. I surely had not the vocation of a domestic paragon. When I poured out tea, it was done the reverse of neatly, and the spotless tea-cloth was spotless no longer, for I poured more water on to it than into the cups, and Mamma regretfully decided that I hadn't got the right turn for housekeeping. My culinary efforts were also not to meet approval, and the cakes that I amused myself in baking one day were recognized, I am aggrieved to say, as not being fit to eat. The end of section 6.